Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Our happy lunchtime, I should say, right?
I scarfed some naan and some Iberico cheese on my last call with Polly. So
bragging is not nice. I just want to say, I had coffee.
oh, sad days.
If you sit at your desk at 7 with your coffee, what happens is then it's 9. These are the
I
laws.
too have experienced that weird law of
These are
time.
the laws of the universe that we cannot seem to adjust, no matter how hard we fundraise.
So Polly, I want to make sure, because I am concerned, when I clicked the link in my my Google Meet or my Google Calendar,
It's
I got
not
an
working.
error. Yeah,
It's not working.
so we need to fix that. Can you respond? Can you go into Zoom, copy the invitation and send it to Michelle's Fundraising Friday from 10:04?
Yeah, Michelle and I just did an email, and the way I was able to find my way was to go to her link she sent out today.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the link that worked for me too.
So the one that's on the calendar, I think, is an issue. If that makes any sense. I don't know, but all right, let me see if I can get my screen shared. This party started. Oh, my screens are backwards again.
It's gonna make me cry if we talk about Brittany.
We always try to have a photo that is the like, what are we dealing with and seeing this week? Because we always want to,
Yeah, it's
just
very
kind of
vital.
make sure that we're not glossing over what's going on in the sector.
Indeed.
My computer's driving me flipping bonkers because so Polly, I'm gonna ask you to monitor chat. I can't see a soul. Let me see if I can do this.
Finding that image of her with that t-shirt's pretty darn powerful. Nice work.
It was actually, I can't take credit. It was in my Instagram feed. Hey there, whoever is not on mute, if they could be muted, thank you. Let me see if I can. So I have my laptop and 2 monitors, and the last time I rebooted, they got funky on me. So everything is reordered. So forgive me as I drag my stuff across screens here. Okay. That should at least make me functional. All right, we are up to 11 people, which is more than I thought we would have. These summer sessions are always questionable. So thank you guys for showing up today. We appreciate it. We will give everyone, we'll call it 2 more minutes, and then we will dive on in.
I resent the link to everyone, so hopefully folks will get it. Hope it wasn't too hard to get joining for the folks who are on right now. Appreciate y'all.
I always think this is such a desired topic, but also a one that everybody just wants to roll their eyes at, because like, really, I just recovered from last end of year. So, all right, 1 more minute and we will dive in. And it's exciting to see some new names on our attendee list. And you guys are gonna have to tell me if I look funny, etc., because I literally can't see any of your faces the way my monitors are set up, so. Okay, it is 12:34. We are officially gonna dive on in. We have 14 folks on the phone. Welcome to our second session for end of year fundraising in July. This is the deep dive session. If you missed session 1 2 weeks ago, it is on the private YouTube channel for Fundraising Friday, where we have all the videos and all of the PDFs of the decks. So if you have missed anything in our journey together over the last over 2 years, there is lots of good stuff there for your viewing enjoyment. My name is Bethany Mackey. I'm the executive director here at Progressive Multiplier. I have with me on the phone today my program partner in crime, Polly Stamatopoulos. Say hi, Polly.
Hi there. I'm the Senior Director of Movement Group Engagement. Nice to see y'all.
And I think we have Andrea Mast, who is our fearless leader of all things operations and make sure that we keep running. So say hi, Andrea.
Hello, everyone. I'm just here in the background.
We all invite all of our staff to every training we do, just in case anybody has a burning desire to learn through osmosis here about all things fundraising. So Progressive Multiplier, for those of you who don't know, we are a funding intermediary, which means we get grants from largely progressive foundations, and then we break them up and give them to largely small and medium, some more mature progressive nonprofits working in one of our key program areas. And we fund fundraising experiments with that money. So we are all about resourcing revenue generation for the progressive movement. We work with groups that have programs in achieving justice, realizing democracy, and restoring the environment. If you have any question about whether you qualify for a grant from us to work on all things RevGen, feel free to reach out to Polly and talk about eligibility. We are trying in this next year to make sure that we have resources available for groups who are not, who do not meet our criteria for grant making, so that we can serve the broadest swath of the movement possible. But definitely don't hesitate to reach out. We give grants once a year. They go out in June or June at the end of our fiscal. No, Andrea is ready to like reach through the screen and smack me upside the head. And then if we have any money that comes in that is unrestricted, we also give grants on an as we are funded basis, but the money we give out of our own general operating money, we do at the end of our fiscal year. We have 2 partners in this initiative that allows us to host Fundraising Friday, the Resilience Initiative and Leaders Trust.
Hey, Bethany, if
yeah.
you're presenting, it's not showing up on screen. You're still on the cover slide.
That's really weird. All right, we're gonna try that again. You missed all of our beautiful pictures.
There you go.
Oh, I can't wait to get my new computer. Okay. We have partners. You guys are here through the auspices of either the Resilience Initiative or the Leaders Trust. Please throw into the chat who you're connected to, what your organization is, your role. We always like to know if we've got development directors on the phone, fundraising managers, digital fundraisers, executive directors. It helps us tailor the conversation accordingly based on what you're interested in. We do record the session. You got that lovely Zoom notification at the top of the call. We put all the recordings of these on our private YouTube channel. Only Fundraising Friday participants get access. So let us know if you need any recordings. Beyond Fundraising Friday, we also do one-on-one coaching. I don't know if we have any of our one-on-one coaching folks on the phone. We usually have somebody who's willing to say that we do a good job, but we will spend hours with you working on your fundraising project. So we usually do about 5 hours. You can break that up in a 1 5-hour slot, 5 1-hour slots, whatever works. There's no, you must use the time within a month. If you need us for a couple months and break the time up that way. We do have groups that do multiple 5 hours. So we've got some people who have signed up with us 3 times. We'll do whatever project you want. We'll help you train your board on fundraising. We'll help you put together your annual plan. We will help you put together major moves management plans. We will help you build integrated communications between your marketing and your fundraising teams. Pretty much anything that you can come up with, we're willing to dive into. So if you have any desire to do that, please reach out to Michelle Mangle at Resilience. Her email is at the top here, or reach out to Polly and she can hook you up with Michelle. We have finally set our curriculum as we are getting into the fall semester. Our intern is leaving us at the end of next week, so we know we have hit school time. So our fall semester, we are going to start in August 19th, which is our next session, talking about the giving crisis in the economy. And then we are going to do peer-to-peer, hybrid events, reporting, and then everybody's favorite sessions in December, Polly's crystal ball and all of our predictions for 2023. We are going to make an effort to start building out real life templates and guides and things that will be materials that we'll put in the chat for you guys in some of these later sessions, so that you'll have a template for how to do your annual planning and how to start building your report template and all that good stuff. So as you look at this curriculum, please throw in the chat if there are any burning questions on these topics, especially this giving crisis one. I had gotten a lot of calls from our grantee partners about, hey, this economy and inflation, what the hell? And what do we need to do? So please let us know what you're interested in talking about there. All right. We are going to do a review of the highlights from session 1, just so we're all grounded in end of year fundraising process and procedure, because it is end of year in July. Then we're going to have a roundtable discussion. We've got a great sized group and Kirsten over at the Santa Cruz Museum reached out and helped me brainstorm some questions based on her experience of running essentially a one-woman development shop of how do you do this work when you have no staff. So we have structured the roundtable discussion around that. And then we're going to open the floor for questions. And we really want to give you guys some serious space to say, here's where I am, here's exactly where I need your help on my program. Or if you have any general questions, those are always welcome too. Any questions, guys, before we get started? All right. So session 1 review. Polly, you want to take this or you want me to?
You go for it.
All right, I shall go for it. Just trying to find what freaking monitor my mouse is on here. All right. So you basically have a 5-point to-do list for end of year. And the biggest thing that we can tell you is start now. It may seem crazy. It may seem like, hey, we maybe do 1 or 2 appeals. Why do we need to start now? Trust us, start now. There is always going to be a little more data digging than you anticipate. It's always going to be a little harder to get assets together that you want to really sing, all of that kind of stuff. And the more highway you give yourself, the better your end of year will be. And we know that that is from all the great stats that Polly shared in our last class, that this is the one can't miss time of year. So start early, give yourself highway for the inevitable falls that are going to happen. Not review your date, but review your data from last year or multiple years if you've got it. And we'll talk a little bit later about how much data do you need to work with and how to tackle this if you are a one-person shop. But at the end of the day, there is no point in planning end of year if you've done it before without looking at what worked and what didn't. And when we say what worked and what didn't, don't just think about the revenue that came in. Obviously, that's the end game. We're fundraisers, but what was hard to get out the door that didn't maybe produce what you wanted it to? What was super easy to get out the door that did okay? All of that kind of stuff, so that you start thinking holistically about what was hard, what was easy, what brought in the money, what didn't, etc. The second thing is really defining what you need out of the end of year cycle. For those of you that have calendar fiscals, so you run a January through December fiscal year, there is extra pressure on end of year if you're going into it behind on your projections. So that's one of the reasons why we say start planning now, because if you know you're projecting off, here we are like, just past the mid-year point, we've got some highway to build in some gap measures before and not put all of that pressure on your end of year. So really look at what you financially need out of your end of year performance and make sure that those goals are realistic. And also, if you have an executive director or board chair that is saying you have to earn this and is completely ignoring you in terms of what realistically you can produce, call one of us. We are happy to help you put together the number-based ironclad argument that it's not just about fairy dust, that there's actual science behind end of year fundraising. So if anybody's running into that, let me know. That is a common thing with a lot of our grantee partners. So we're always here to be advocates for you. Planning the experience you want to deliver. So this is all about, what is your audience going to see? Who are you talking to? What are you offering them? What do you want it to look and feel like? And how often are you going to talk to them across what channels? So do the math first, because that will inform how much you need to ask. And then plan, what does that look like? Some of you will pick a theme for end of year. Some of you will just go straight up annual report and appeal. Some of you may be tagging on to post-election narrative. So think about the kind of vibe that you want to create through end of year. And then put a production calendar to it. Again, this is why we start in July, because the goal is to have everything wrapped up in the start production, so that you have everything wrapped up kind of like once you hit early November, so that you are not sitting there like the night before Giving Tuesday trying to get an email put together. There's just too much risk because of the amount of money involved in end of year to have yourself up against those timeframes. So make sure that you start now, get your assets together before you push send on the first one. And then the last piece, and this is really, really important, rest and recover. If you have a big end of year season, it is exhausting. I know my team used to take off the we would January 1st, 2nd, do all of the reporting, and then mandatory took 5 days off after that because we had been cranking really hard for 6 solid weeks. And just as an aside, if you are new to the fundraising game and you haven't done end of year before, if you want to have an offline chat about like how I personally have managed that with my family and my career as a fundraiser, I'm a lousy New Year's Eve date. I told that to my husband when we got together. My family that I spend holidays with is totally used to me leaving and checking donation forms. So if you have any concerns about navigating this within the context of your real life, because it is a weird time, let us know. Between Polly and I, we have done this for 50 odd years. We are happy to help. And then after you have taken a good solid breath, come back and do your postmortem while it's still fresh in your mind. So you've got notes to go back to say, this worked, this didn't, this was a pain in the tush, and this was great. Because sometimes we block it out and it's hard to remember a year later. So that's Polly's entire 90 minutes from last week, and I think probably 3 minutes or less. Are there any questions that anybody wants to dig into from what they heard then, or what we've gone over really quickly here? And again, I can't see your faces, so please let me know if there's any hands raised or things like that.
I know folks have opinions. I don't see any hand raised though. Anybody want to jump in? All right, well, we'll press on.
We will, because we're actually going to call on people later. So
May I ask a quick question? Sorry.
Absolutely, ma'am.
I had a problem with my mute button.
It's
Only that
okay.
would happen in real life. So my question is, and I was thinking about it, for folks who didn't have, who weren't running or involved with their annual appeal last year, that postmortem piece, which is so valuable. Is there another tool that they can do to, if their organization is over a year or two old, where they can check in with the rest of their team on how it went last year? Like, I was thinking about what data could they pull, or what conversation could they have with their ED? It's just putting it out there. I don't expect an answer, but I just wanted to pose the question for folks so they could start percolating it in their minds, because you do want to talk about what transpired the year before if you weren't on staff or you didn't run it last year.
Do we have any newbies to their position or new to end of year fundraising in total folks on the phone? Benna.
Yes, I'm new. It's Benet. Yeah.
Benet.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone.
So as you think about getting into end of year, has your organization been doing end of year campaigns for a while? Is there data for you to look at, or are you flying blind?
We're 39 years old, so yes, they have, and my previous person was awesome, and so I do have materials, and I also have I'm working with Resilience Initiative on some coaching, so
cool.
That's set up. So
Awesome.
I'm feeling confident and probably mostly naive.
I love it.
We have several folks.
Go ahead, Polly.
We also have several folks on the chat who said that they are new in their roles. So I think we can take a minute here.
Okay. Yeah, I can't see the chat. So Polly, do you want to call out our chat people and see if we can dig into end of year for newbies?
Yeah, so I'd love to hear Michelle, Danielle, Alba. Do you want to talk about that, or what you all faced, how you did it, what are you concerned about that we could possibly help with?
I can go for Soulforce's team. We have been a one-person shop historically, and the co-ED and I normally run end of year campaign with Joss doing 90% of the actual work and us together doing more conceptual work. And we have two new people, one who has been here, Megan, who has been in our org for a while and helped with the admin stuff. But we've always just kind of flown by the seat of our pants. And so now that we have an ample team of 4 who have a few hours, because all of us do other things also, I think we're trying to figure out how do we start this conversation like in October. And so we're like, what, July? And so now we're kind of just trying to figure out if there's a structure, because it's really just been like the best we could do, breakneck at the end of the year, in addition to all the other things. So now we're just trying to figure out like, okay, we have some admin support, we have some comm support. We're still a small team, but we would love some, like Joss put in there, like what are the metrics that we use when we're talking about look at your data from last year, apart from dollars raised and cost per piece, what are the kinds of things at which we might have gotten from the other session? We can go back and look at it, but we're just trying to figure out what we should be thinking about. And we were shocked to be like, July, okay. It actually makes sense, but we're like, okay, we're behind already.
Yes, as are we, because we took a year off or a week off. So both of these sessions were supposed to be in July. So it's July-ish. August works too. So in terms of metrics, outside of like, we raised this much in cost per piece, I think metrics is almost a misnomer. Who gave? One of the biggest things that I think we see is that the people who give at end of year, they're sort of split into your Giving Tuesday folks and your true end of year folks. And the end of year folks tend to be deep in the family fold. They already know you. They have donated before. This is a great time to renew, to upsell. Whereas Giving Tuesday is an excellent campaign to activate those folks who've not given before but are on your list. and potentially, if depending on campaign, even acquire direct to donor. So it's really, if you have the data to look at who gave when during that end of year flight, was it early in December, late in December, depending on what you do. We certainly see spikes in November giving for a lot of the food banks and sort of more direct service crew. So I would say that's probably the thing that's most important. Polly, what would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's important to look at. And if you have that, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a minute, and if you have any of the like response rates from last year, like you sent out X number of pieces and you got X number of Y number of donations, even, you know, how many unsubscribes or how many, you know, aborted donation forms, or, you know, like start with whatever basic information you can discover and see what you can just learn from it. And then if you can get the deeper stuff, like how many people like started to fill out the donation form then stopped, each extra piece of information data gives you just something else to look at. So like if I, for example, noticed, if I had the information, I noticed that there was a bunch of folks who abandoned their donation form halfway through, I would probably spend July, August, September really playing with that donation form, finding out where the friction points are, you know, things like that. So sometimes this navel gazing, the postmortem that you do in, you know, after, but also the navel gazing that you're doing now before, isn't so much about the appeal, but it's about all the things that help the person, you know, make the gift too. So what was the messaging? Also, like, think about what were the external events going on this time last year that could have impacted. Maybe it wasn't you, you know, maybe it wasn't the ask. It could have been something else. But that's why we take these moments to sort of, you know, be contemplative about it. Did Michelle or Danielle want to say anything about this, since you had mentioned in the chat that y'all were fresh?
Thanks. This is Danielle, and I'm with Justice Outside. And I'll just say that, so like, I'm new to my position and my focus is like primarily on individual giving. And so we did do like an end of year appeal last year. And we had like a pretty modest goal. And this year, like I guess like I would like to make it a little bit bigger with a like heavy focus on kind of segmenting our donors, because that's definitely something we haven't done in the past, but we definitely have all of our metrics. And we did already start planning before I even jumped on these calls. So it was great to hear like, okay, we're like on the right track by like laying down like an outline and having a plan. So yeah, I think that's it, but thank you.
Awesome, and shout out to our friends at Justice Outside to show you the power of Fundraising Friday. So Robert Sindelaire, who is the Chief Development Officer at Justice Outside, was one of our very first Fundraising Friday attendees and called me up and said, would we qualify for a grant? And they are now a grantee in our environmental justice cohort. So we're working on a different stream of revenue project outside of individual giving. But they also were one of our one-on-one coaching folks. And we did an integrated comms and fundraising calendar together. So that's some of the infrastructure that Danielle, new to her position, is leaning into. So definitely give us a call about any of those pieces. We love working with folks a little more closely, and Justice Outside has done a phenomenal job kind of, you know, starting an individual giving program almost from scratch. So I think, Danielle, as you go into this, where there's room to grow, I know that you guys have really taken a sort of chill vibe to end of year in the past, which I think aligns with sort of the narrative culture. And I think one of the things to play with might be some of those more classic end of year tactics around urgency. So maybe find how do you take that messaging up just a notch from an urgency, and maybe putting some specific goals around it. I think that would be a low risk thing to try. that should net you some more money. Paula, does that sound right to you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and if I remember correctly, some of the things that you were promoting last year was about like community centered fundraising, and I think that was sort of new messaging. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, so you might have also seen some hesitation because it felt new and different, and like, why are you talking to me in this way? So I wouldn't necessarily say, toss it because it didn't work, but I would maybe put that as like something that could have affected results. If you went with the same messaging this year, you might get better results because people have now seen it once already and they might be more comfortable with it. But we do know that the end of the year urgency helps. And so I definitely echo Bethany's comment there. And whether the urgency is just because it's the end of the year and folks like to give by December 31st, or because you have a specific goal that you want to reach by end of the year, I think there is a way to attach on a calendar urgency that always seems to help fundraising. Give people deadlines in life, whether it's fundraising or work, tends to help than if you make it open-ended.
Sure.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you both so much.
Michelle, did you have anything that you wanted to jump in terms of as a newer to end of year fundraiser?
I don't think so. I've done end of year fundraising for many years. I just
Gotcha, just new to your position.
Yeah, kind of. I've done now one end of year campaign in I kind of do fundraising for two organizations, and it's my second time for one of the organizations and my third time for the other. I guess one thing that's interesting, if this is helpful to anybody, is one of the organizations I fundraised for hadn't done any end of year fundraising, really hardly any fundraising at all when I started. And now I'm going to be doing my third end of year campaign for that organization. And so I'm just like thrilled to have some data to go off of versus like having absolutely no data. But it was interesting to put together a plan that's just like, never done this before. What does it look like? And since then I've been trying to like test things a little bit. And one thing I learned, one thing I'm still trying to figure out for that group is the mail. Like we weren't really getting returns from mail. And so I tried testing it, which our list is pretty small, but I just split it in half and didn't see much return. And so I'm curious to figure that piece of it out, and if it's just like that our list isn't good for mail, or if there's something we should be doing differently. Or
do you have a mail program during the year?
Well, this is the group that hadn't fundraised until I came.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
I started the standard spring, fall, year end type of thing, but we weren't really getting, we were barely breaking even.
Yeah. So we don't often talk about mail on these calls, and part of me has been wondering, should we do like a off-cycle, mail refresher, or what's up in mail now? So if you are coming in and trying to start a mail program from scratch,
you're getting a lot of amens on the mail.
Even if, wow, who knew direct mail would be cool? I love me some mail. So I think that if you are starting a mail program, it is really important, even though it is your house list, it is not going to break even. The first time. At least I have never experienced that in my, how old, 22, 23-ish years doing this. So if you are going at and actually renting list names or doing anything like that, and emailing like brand new people that you've never touched before, that definitely isn't going to break even in one campaign and probably won't break even for a good 24 to 36 months with repeated mailings. So there is definitely a place for mail. We don't have anybody from Green Faith on the phone, but I know they do a really robust letter campaign twice a year, one of them being end of year. And they follow it up with calls, you know, to select slices of their list, like, hey, did you get my letter? Kind of calls, of course, very lovely, and Reverend Fletcher is incredibly kind and persuasive. But so I think that mail is a tough nut to crack if you are looking for immediate returns. It's definitely part of a slower burn strategy. But I wouldn't look at, go ahead.
Is that true even if you're only mailing people who have donated before? You still wouldn't expect it to break even in the beginning?
If it's their first time getting mail, yeah.
Okay.
If you
That's
haven't mailed
helpful.
before, even if it's your house list, because they were either like event donors or digital donors or something.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And especially like that digital to mail transition can be interesting to measure. What we've seen in some of the more mature digital programs is that they're really getting good at what are the mail touches that force or encourage a digital transaction. HRC does this masterfully. Like if it's within your budget, become like a $5 monthly sustainer to HRC just to watch what they do. Because they do much cheaper direct mail packages to their direct mail donors, a lot of postcards, a lot of foldovers, like nothing with a reply device that then prompts a digital gift or an extension, you know, an increase in a sustainer gift or something like that. So mail is something that, you know, to play with over time. I know some of you on the phone likely have done, you know, have some pretty robust end of year appeal letters that are part of your strategy. I'd love to hear about how those return, just to give the folks on the phone who are just starting to get into mail, especially around end of year, what they can expect once a program is really up and running. Kirsten, do you have any perspective on that one from an end of year letter perspective?
Yeah, and of course we're trying to turn up the volume on the electronic engagement and online engagement for the giving program. We're an institution that is 117 years old, even though we're very tiny. I was a little bit anxious last year about the slow response. The first thing to expect after you sent out is your mailing and you've done all the envelopes and prepping is to feel a little bit sick to your stomach for a while. If you've never done it before.
True story.
And to anxiously check your mail more often than you should and bother the person who brings it to you. But then the other thing is if you're doing it mid-November, end of November, is there will be kind of a slow build and then a nice steady return rate. If you have never sent a hard mailing, as we call it back in the day, to folks, I wouldn't expect a large return on it, but it is a way of creating connectivity. So make sure that you're not doing a ridiculously extravagant spend on it. You can do a really effective mailing without spending a lot of money. And that is something I have always told clients. It's more about the heartful message and the imagery that you choose and a really nicely defined return envelope with a tear-off sheet. You want to make sure you make it easy for people to mail it back to you. So 1 or 2 pieces with a self-addressed envelope is the most effective strategy I've ever had. Can I answer any questions about it? Moreover,
I'd like to just interject too, in that if you're doing mailing at year end, I think it's important to also track where you start seeing bumps in your online on what looks like unsolicited donations. So like I might like mark on my calendar, this was the drop date that the mail house told me it hit the post office, and then start literally like the day after or 2 days after, depending on what the zip code range that I'm mailing to is from our, from where it's going to go to get the money is going to get deposited, if it's checks or then I literally will look at that, pay attention to the calendar and keep checking, like, what are we seeing a steady increase in our donation button getting clicked on our website for no other reason, for no good reason, like we didn't do emailing or it didn't come through a link through. So you might be seeing donations that your direct mail piece is encouraging donations, just not with the reply device, just not by check, just not by the way that you wanted them to. You got some oppositional givers maybe, and they went and gave on their own way. So think about like we talked about last time, how like social can be surround sound, direct mail can be surround sound too, if it depends on where folks are on their age group, like how they tend to behave with their mailings.
And
The other thing I just wanted to say, because I absolutely agree with that, and we did see that, is there are folks who were hard mail check writers who the last couple of years, it just kind of kicks in. They've learned how to use technology in ways that they hadn't before. And so it just kind of is like pushes that button, and then they go to their tablet and to go, oh, wow, I can do it this way. So I second that.
yeah, that was one of the most, I always say that my house is an interesting generational case study. I am the youngest of Gen X. My husband is the oldest of Gen X, and my mom just turned 80. And it was fascinating during the pandemic to see the shift in her behavior digitally. And we're actually in talking to some friends who run larger fundraising programs like at National Geographic or big foundations. They are seeing the same thing, that these tried and true check writers that have been giving for years with check during the pandemic, because it was pain in the tush to get stamps or whatever it was, figured out how to give online. So like my mom now gives online, which freaks me out. Because she has been like the classic check writer, and now she isn't. So definitely don't despair. If folks switch channels on you, given multiple channels, any of those things, that's 100% okay. But don't panic when you send a direct mail piece and you don't get the check back. Definitely, track their giving at the level of their record versus the touch record, if that makes sense.
And it gives you an opportunity now, I think, knowing this, right? An opportunity to skinny down your direct mail piece. You could possibly go down to the point of to the ease of a postcard even, or maybe a self mailer. If you did something that was a little bit more extravagant, you don't have to go all the way down to a postcard. But knowing that, like, folks are responding in different ways, maybe you can save some expense to increase your return on investment by changing up your mailer.
Yeah. And also taking into account that we do have supply chain issues on paper. The post office is running about 10 days slower than previous years. So all of that, again, there's a reason we do this in July-ish. So if anything, make sure you have, and you're going to do mail as part of your end of year campaign, make sure you're starting to think materials and getting those in now. Okay, we have bounced all over the place, which those are my favorite fundraising Fridays, because it means it's really good organic conversation. But it's definitely hard to then figure out what to do next. So we're talking about the postmortem. We have giggled about when to start, but I want to make sure that everybody saw this in the first session. There are these 2 slides that are literally an August through December map of if you are going to do both email and mail or other digital goodness like social media. This is a really good guideline. So the PDF of the deck is on the YouTube channel along with the recording. If you don't have time for the recording, just download the deck if you want some of these tools. But so this is, and these are from our friends at MadAv Collective. The other thing in that deck is there are our latest blogs that we think are worth reading about end of year, because our goal here is to not regurgitate what's already out there, but to provide you guys more space to talk about your specific cases, and to find that peer support, to talk through your questions. So make sure that you grab those 3 slides from the deck last time. All right, so what are we stuck on for end of year planning right now? I know a lot of people have brought up data in terms of what am I looking at? Any other data questions we wanted to dig into? Or are there other places you guys are feeling you're having trouble getting the wheel turning? Now everybody's quiet.
Maybe one question I have is just about inversion to, like, this is a very broad question and y'all should answer it however makes sense, but it's about like time, money, energy, creativity in versus what comes out, because our team spends just a zillion hours making the most beautiful, the most heartfelt, whatever thing. And sometimes I wonder, like, is this worth all of this energy? Like just weeks of stress and like details and design. And it's a very heavy lift for us, even though we just usually do like a front and back with a little insert. But because we're doing it all in-house, apart from like the actual printing, but even that, we're like with the printer talking about the list. And it just, I wonder, for me, I understand it as important to touch our donors. We have an aging donor base in general, and so I know that that's good, but I would love some guidelines around when we're like, this is just too much in for what we get out, or other ways to gauge whether or not we're getting stuff out besides the quantity of dollars that come in.
Oh, I love this question. And I think anybody who has got a little bit of gray hair going on, who has been through this, and asked that question many times over the years, loves this question. Kirsten, do you want to dive in first?
The only reason I wanted to address a little bit of it is because we are such a small organization. We went from having, 3 full-time employees to now having 7. So what I would say to you is, when you're working on your marketing plan for your end of year plan, one of the things I think is most important is that it's a drumbeat for whatever the languages you're going to use for the year to come. That you're taking elements of what you want to say throughout the year and what you want to, what was successful from the previous year, and you're kind of blending them into, it's kind of sprinkling breadcrumbs for engagement for the year to come, but also so that you're not double dipping on your marketing staff or yourself, as the case may be. So just whatever you do for your annual appeal, make sure it's the kind of the tone you want to set with all of your communications pieces and marketing pieces for the year to come. And it won't feel like you're just completely sucked dry by doing it, because you'll have those things to go back to throughout the year to come. That's what I do, at least. But again, we're small but mighty.
Yeah, we are small but mighty as well. There are 5 of us here at Progressive Multiplier. And I do think that the piece about making sure the assets that you are putting the hours and the love into are reusable. So when you're thinking about what are you talking about at end of year, make sure if you are a small shop, if you are resource constrained, that they are multi-use, whether you're shooting a video or it's photo assets or templates you're building for emails, because that can balance out the scales of was it worth it. And the one thing, and this may not be a really popular view, I spent 10 years working in agency. And so when I look at staff, they have a cost, an actual direct and indirect hard cost to the organization. So like I can tell you, and I'm sure Andrea could rattle it off for all of us, how much I cost Progressive Multiplier an hour in salary and benefits. and 401k and all of those things. And I know that because when we write the contract for Resilience Initiative, I put into what we asked them for, what it costs for Polly and I to be in this call for 90 minutes. So I've always done the same with what does it take to produce end of year, to see if we're putting too much energy into it. Because I think sometimes we only think of what are we paying for the postage, what are we paying for the paper, what are we paying for the software, but we aren't thinking about, especially if you've got somebody doing a lot of writing, a lot of designing, what did that actually cost us? So when you do your postmortem, don't have anybody keep a time card. They might kill you, especially during end of year, but you know, get a handle on what is the cost of your staff. And then was there a higher, better needle moving thing they could have done with that time based on the returns that you got? I totally agree with what was said in terms of this is part of a continuing narrative. It's not like you can just not do it, but if you aren't getting the high return based on the effort you're putting in, there is no crime in dialing back the effort and seeing where that break point is of, are you getting the return that is worth the effort? Because I don't think we think about staff cost enough at end of year.
I have been a one-woman shop a bunch of times in my career, and I've had really great successes and I have failed miserably multiple times. One of the things that I've learned is that for me, it's really important to get to write, and I try to do it, early enough in that I'm not stressed with year-end stuff, but like in tenure enough that I know the organization, to just write a really good, solid, this is what we do, and this is why we're awesome, and this is why you should be down with us sort of letter. And I use that as the basis for every fundraising appeal that I write after that. I swap out paragraphs. So, and the reason why I do, I focus some time on one solid letter is because when I've got 5 proposals due and end of the year staring me down and I can't find a minute, what I know is I have to change to make this a useful letter for year end. I have to change paragraph 3 and paragraph 5, and most of it can stay the same. And the PS, and most of it can stay the same. And is that like the best fundraising advice ever? Nope. Did it still get me decent open rates, decent returns? Because remember, end of year, you're mailing to your family. Your family is a little bit more forgiving. And so you can be a little bit quick if you need to. And the other thing to remember is our messaging is old to us because we're writing our mission statement 5,000 times a year. We're writing why we're important to the world 5,000 times a year. Your donors are seeing it twice a year. It is not old to them.
That is an excellent point.
I kind of have the opposite question because we work on abortion and LGBTQ issues, and it's
You haven't had a busy year at all.
No, it's changing every week. And so I know that planning ahead is good, but historically too, I've done more of it's all going to change. And so I just wait to write the stuff, so it's the freshest and most timely message. And I've also experienced at a past organization having breaking news the Friday before Christmas that changes everything, and having to rewrite the whole. And so I guess I'm just trying to figure out how much planning ahead to and how to plan ahead in a way that is still flexible and timely.
That's a great question, Michelle, and we're sending you collective love. I know how hard it has been for all of our grantee partners in the reproductive justice space and the LGBTQ space, in especially some of the state levels we work with Equality Florida. So Definitely sending you guys love from the fundraising perspective and beyond. So the way I have dealt with it in the past is based on the data. I know to get the performance I want out of end of year, I need X number of touches, right? Whether that's emails or impressions or mail pieces. So I do the math and say, here's what the recipe is. And then I do, if it's possible, I do what's called a Swiss cheese approach. So write what I can, like the boilerplate stuff, and leave the holes out for the things that are going to be driven by dropping legislation, you know, any of that kind of stuff. Most of our grantees work in some really robust legislative environments, so we deal with this stuff often. And you can usually clear off about 50% of the copywriting and the design work and the, you know, the coding setup, the things that you can do ahead of time, do. And be very purposeful then, like Polly said about those repurposable paragraphs. That's what you're looking for, is what is the repurposable content like that you're talking about, you, not your approach to the thing that is breaking news or the news story that just dropped, whatever it might be. That has helped a lot in my past, take a little bit of the crazy out. And if I can preset things up, like then actually go and write the copy in the test message that's already set up versus starting from scratch, because I was waiting for, you know, Congress to get off their ass at, you know, before Christmas break, whatever it might be. So that's really helped for me, is doing that Swiss cheese approach. Polly, anybody else on the phone who's had that sort of issue to navigate?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And the other thing that has happened in my life too is that after you drop it, after you send it, something big happens and how to respond. And I think that you just have to look at your calendar, look at all the touches that you're trying to have, look at the hours in the day. And that's when you know, have to figure out like what level of response do you want to do? Are you jeopardizing are you overstimulating your donors if you do try to do an add-on? And they're all tough questions, but if you have like, if your organization has like a comms department that is going to be doing messaging on X and you don't have to worry about it, then maybe you just leave it there. If you're really it for both comms and fundraising, then it has to become like on some level a gut check. Stick with the plan, or is this important enough that you have to disrupt the plan? And then you have to figure out how those ripple effects are going to impact the rest of your plan.
Yeah, I think it's either plan for the fact that you know you're going to have late breaking stuff, or plan for pivot if there is a campaign. Are you going to stick with your baseline and add? Are you going to stick with your baseline, cut half of it off and add something new in? There are like those three approaches of either we're planning so we can be super agile in the moment, we're planning and we'll make the call if it is worthy of adding in, or we're going to make our plan and consciously cut it down and add. So those are really the three scenarios for that sort of fluid end of year if you're dealing with that breaking news or even natural disaster. I can't remember what year it was, but the natural disaster in Haiti happened like the day after Christmas. I can't remember when this was, but there have been twice in my fundraising career where there was like epic natural disaster in those 6 days between Christmas and New Year. And it caused just a complete pivot of the approach. So all of us have to be ready for if something breaks. Michelle, does that help?
Yeah, it does. It's just helpful as I kind of think through planning.
Yeah.
So,
The other thing I want to just sort of point out about the reason why I think about we need to start planning in July, August for this stuff. It's not because we should be creating so much work that it takes from July and August through December 31st to get all of your end of the year stuff done, but that if you plan it early, it's like you can spread out the work over time in a way that allows you to do good fundraising without hopefully killing yourself. Where you can be a little bit more like I said about like, oh, let me focus this time on making sure there's no friction on our donation form. Let me spend a little bit of this time talking with my team about some of the messaging, so that you aren't faced with like these massive like brainstorming discussion, crank out work sessions within this really short period. It just makes it a little bit easier to do more if you can spread it out.
Totally. And Michelle, if that's something, if riffing on how to approach end of year is something that you want to dive deep into what you guys are facing, especially in the reproductive justice space, sign up for one-on-one time where we're happy to go deep on end of year planning. That's something we've done as a common project. That's to everybody on the phone, but especially if you're heading into a weird year, let us know.
Yeah, I just started coaching with Polly, which is, we just met
Voila!
once tonight, but it's been great. And yeah, I'm really excited to get help with planning.
Excellent. Oh, that makes my heart so happy.
Thank you.
Yes, we love our one-on-one coachees. All right. These are great messaging questions. Any other messaging questions around the end of year?
Yeah, I definitely have a question around, we as an organization do so much stuff, like many continents, many areas of work, many different varying people doing that work. And I've heard before the end of year mailer is like telling one or two really good stories, and that feels so unsatisfying. but it's like, okay, this is an emotional based gift mostly. And so I'm just curious about, in terms of content, we want to tell 1,000 stories, and we have followed what we think is like popular advice to like stick to one story. But we have 200 stories to tell from people in really different contexts, like human rights defenders in South Africa versus like abortion activists in Honduras versus like Christian college students in the US. Like they're just such different bodies of work. And so do you have any suggestions on how we choose how many we tell, length, any of that kind of stuff to do the incentivizing as a fundraising letter or email or whatever?
I definitely have thoughts. Polly, do you want to go first? I'm sure you have thoughts.
You go first.
So stop and say, wow, like problem of riches, which is awesome. We have a lot of groups that have the opposite problem. And it's so unsatisfying, I think, is the perfect word of when you have all of this amazing and broad-based work and you can't talk about all of it. So the quote unquote right answer is let the data lead you, and actually purposefully test. And that's another reason why, if you start in July, you've got testing highway of your folks that typically give at end of year. Do they care about, a certain slice of your story more than another? Because typically when we've got a really broad-based programmatic offering, donors care about parts of it, but not all of it. And I know that is heartbreaking to those of us who are in it. It drives me nuts when we talk to funders and they just want to talk about our environmental justice work. And I'm like, but here are these other 90 grantees that are doing this amazing stuff. And so that is the right answer, is let your donors tell you and actually methodically test over the course of the year to see what your end of year donors actually click on, open, etc. Barring knowing that and not having done that robust testing, there are a couple ways to do it. Leukemia Lymphoma Society does a masterful job of stewardship storytelling in Q4, calendar Q4. And they do these sort of very tiny vignettes with photo and maybe 3 or 4 sentences of copy in an email. And they also repurpose them in social to tell this plethora, like the leukemia lymphoma story from all facets, like young and old patients, marginalized community and how cancers affect marginalized communities, like there are 1,000 stories that they need to tell, and they have found a really low lift way to tell a lot of stories in their stewardship vein. And then when they get up to their appeal, they're actually then just making the appeal. They're not including a story in the appeal. They're saying, we've told you these stories, give to support these people and this work. So that's one way to do it. The other thing you could do is, if you've got a 4 or 5 email series at end of year, tell a different story in each one. That is one way to go. A lot of the veterans groups and military oriented groups that I've worked with in the past, you'll see them do that and focus on like Marines in one, and Navy in one, and Army in one. So anybody who's got sort of buckets like that of constituencies, I've seen that as a popular tactic. I don't recommend mixing multiple stories in one email, just because unless it's a direct mail piece and a longer one, like a really traditional multi-page thing. But when you think about an email that you send needing to be like 2-3 screens long with graphics, that's not enough storytelling space. So I would stick to a single story and an appeal. But a lot of different ways to work through that. But as I say, ultimately, you want to make sure you're setting up an annual test matrix to get at that answer, because it has a profound impact on giving. I used to work with Mercy Corps. I've worked with CARE, a lot of groups that had broad international based work, and testing into what countries donors cared about, what demographics they cared about. If you can lock in on that, it can be a 30% difference in revenue.
Oh, absolutely. One of the, I totally agree. Like, I think that you can use other channels to tell specific stories, as a way to support your major appeal. But one of the things that I've done successfully, so if you're and I've done it with mail and email, but it sort of depends on the tools you're using, and in the case of mail, your mail house. So mail for paper, mail houses are more sophisticated than folks let on. So one of the things that I've did was I would use conditional text language in my letters. So literally, like, it was a little bit work on my part. So I would have like a letter that had like a story about one program, and then I would have like maybe 3 other programs that were the exact same size paragraph wise. So it was easier for the printer to do swaps in and out. And what I did was I would go to my database and be like, and identify that either these people and our list like this part of our program. So I segmented them according to how they've behaved previously. So when I dropped the mail, because I knew that they were digitally printing it, I think it was no charge, quite, if I remember correctly, to do the carousel of text. And they were like, if they had this code, it got this, this program's paragraph. It had this code, it had that program's paragraph. A lot of, some of our email marketing tools can do that too.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have that ability to like target your stories, you can write the one letter with the swap out paragraphs and be like, this group of people get this paragraph. And that way you're sending people the content that they like. You don't, if they don't want to hear about college campuses in the US, don't bore them. If they want to hear about, other things, send them what they want. But it basically, the only part that you have to write separately are those paragraphs. And if you can't do those things, then I would do it in the surround, either in the backup, like follow-up messages, or if you are doing 5 separate emails during year end, and use it as an opportunity to test spotlight different programs. If you have more than that many programs and the number of emails that you're sending out, you can also, have a throwaway line in there that sends them to the programs of your website to learn about the other programs that you didn't get to talk about. You probably won't get a lot of clicks on it, but at least you feel good that you did it.
So can I ask one follow-up question?
Mm-hmm.
We are base, who responds to print mail is not on our email or social media. Like those people are old and they aren't on those things. So even if we did test emails throughout the year, I don't think that tells us what the people at the end of year care about. And so do you have any other strategies of how we like divide out our much larger base actually that receives paper mail, but that we generally never hear from? They only get mad if we don't send them something. It's like, well, you didn't ask me for any money this year in June, so I didn't, like they get grumpy because they are used to this over the past 24 years, getting a little piece of paper. So how do we know what those people actually care about to let the data tell us?
How many mail pieces do you send a year? Like how many mailings, I should say, not mail pieces.
How many mailings?
Yes. So how many pieces of mail would I get from you in a year?
Probably 2, like one
Okay.
request and then one other touch at some point during the year that was either a postcard. We stopped doing spring campaigns because we just didn't see a very big return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how big is the list of people who give by mail?
Probably 1,400.
Okay. So
And almost everybody, like it's a very high rate of giving of those people.
So the way I would go for that to get at the data is I would do a survey and actually do a mail survey. And then I would do a follow-up phone campaign and utilize volunteers. And can you get, 20, 25 volunteers and split that list up and give everybody a few weeks to call 5, 10 people a day and follow up on the survey? That's how I would get at that data. Because if you have a high volume mail program, you can test and mail the same way you do electronically. It takes longer, but you can get at the same data. But if you don't have a high volume mail program, you have to straight up ask and put the money into doing a survey and follow calls. Polly, any other way you would slice that?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. The only if I was just sort of like trying to figure it out for this year and I didn't have time to do the survey, I would literally just start reading through all the past end of year letters and see what the theme was. Like, how have they been communicated to previously? If you know that you had a high rate of return and it was a survey, if it was, then I wouldn't necessarily break it up yet. Some organizations that do have multiple projects use their end of the year appeal to be almost like a mini annual report of like, these are the successes that we had in each program area. If that's what they've been getting for 24 years and it's working, I would mimic it. I would do something similar and be planful about the next time. Maybe try to do the surveying through the course of the year and then make the adjustment for end of year 2023.
Does that answer your question? And did those, do you feel like we're full of it, or does that answer your question in a way that feels authentic?
It's super helpful. Polly told us about the possibility of getting more information on our donors. We have a lot of people who we don't know why they give to us because they don't respond to anything. They don't pick up the phone. They don't want to hear from us at all. And yet they continue to give that one time of year. And it's not a ton of money, but a couple $100 from that same family who's given. And so I kind of just think part of me is just like, they just give because their idea of what we are, regardless of what you actually send them, is like something that they're positive, or they had a loyalty to a past ED, even though we have no idea who the hell they are. So we're just trying to figure out what we do with these folks that we really feel totally unreachable, but clearly still care enough to include us in their end of year giving. And we just are trying to figure out how we most honor that relationship, but we cannot figure out how to grow it to save our lives at times 1,000.
Yeah, no, it is. It's, I think, especially for groups in the more progressive sector, we work with People for the American Way, and they have, they have this core older donor base that isn't necessarily, at all aligned with the work that they do now. And it makes for a real storytelling challenge. And but the brand affinity is so high, they keep giving. So what I would caution is that make sure you don't end up standing up parallel programs, that there's still enough connective tissue between your legacy, what you're talking to your legacies about, and then what you're talking to your newer donors about, so that you don't accidentally create a lot of extra work. I've done that in the past, and it's just not fun. So that would be the one word of caution. But yeah, I agree that if you want to get into the getting more data, that's something to do in the off season. Do that February, March, and then put it into play for your other appeals. Does that help?
I'm gonna pick on Joss too, because she put a good question in they put a good question in the chat.
Yeah, I was shy about it because we were talking about messaging, so I didn't want to take away from that. But I think I just keep coming back to a question that y'all talked a little bit about in the beginning of how do you prioritize tactics when in this digital realm, we have phone, we have email, we have some organizations do text, we don't, but every year, we at Soulforce stick to direct mail because our list is warmed and prepped for that. And like Alba said, we have good returns on that. But always are trying to prioritize some new strategy. And sometimes we just pick whatever the team is most excited about trying out that year. Sometimes I try to do some research on what, experts think is going well. This year, I'm thinking a lot about email because we've warmed up our mailing list, our email list significantly. And I found that when I did our Give Out Day campaign, we had way fewer unsubscribes and contained the same, kept the same open rates that we do for our programmatic mail. And so, but still, I guess I'm just kind of how are other orgs picking their tactics? I know there's no one-stop shop or rule about what tactics you choose, but what are the factors, if our team could spend 5 hours phone banking versus 5 hours writing emails versus 5 hours, whatever, how do you choose where you go, especially if you don't have data on whether or not that works for your org because it's a new strategy?
Holly, you get to go first on this one.
Well, I am, I try not to shuffle up my tactics too much. In the I'm going to try this year and this next year, because I want to start to create patterns. I want to see how folks are going to respond, because whenever you do something for the first time, you're not going to get great rates. When organizations who have never done individual fundraising start fundraising, they sometimes feel discouraged or start individual fundraising because they're like, our people aren't responding like the averages say they should. Well, they haven't become accustomed to you asking. So, you gotta get them in the practice. The M&R benchmark study is a great tool for seeing, what the national averages are for, various tactics. But knowing that you're not going to get that off the at the gate, I would probably say do what you do best, and what you end of the year is not a great time to half-ass. When you have to. If you've got 20,000 proposals to do and you want to get an appeal out and you use the Swiss cheese approach, that's why you set up the system, so that you can do things on the fly, but don't look on the fly to everybody else. But I would say if you're good at the phone banking, relational fundraising, peer-to-peer, then do that. If you're good at the direct mail, then do that. And if you can test one thing, then I would maybe like throw in a one thing that you can test. But yeah, I would be a little bit stepwise and methodical about it and make sure that I'm doing the thing that's going to get me the best bang for my labor buck as much as, you know, every other. What are your thoughts, Bethany?
Yeah, I probably like the way you put that, the bang for the labor buck. And yes, it's a great question. Because we always want to, I mean, there is something new coming out every flipping week, right? In terms of functionalities and product that we can incorporate into our fundraising. So make sure when you, so holistically, I'm thinking about it outside of end of year, make sure you're budgeting an R&D line if you have that bandwidth, because otherwise you're going to be sitting here 5 years from now and doing an email program. If you don't budget to test into new tactics. And testing is not free. So have the conversation with those who control the budget. Call on us if we can help you get backup. But doing digital fundraising especially, right, requires ongoing testing into new tactics. So there's that part as a foundation. And then it's methodically testing into that stuff that is one step away from what you're really good at. So as Polly said, like, if you are really good at the relational phone banking stuff, getting into peer-to-peer fundraising isn't that much of a stretch. But if you've only done direct mail and you want to try a peer-to-peer program, that's a big leap. So try to make your testing leaps doable so you have less chance of falling flat on your focus. That is kind of the goal in coming up with tests. And it is also, you have a better chance of success because you got the skill set in-house than going really far reaching and doing something totally sparkly that's out of your comfort zone, because that's usually too much of a stretch to do it right. And then you've wasted the testing budget. It's about working up to that. And it takes a couple of cycles to like test into the stuff that's out of your comfort zone, but still doable. And then you will be to the place where it's like, okay, we have got a broad enough base of skill set. We have enough data that we've tested into enough stuff. We know that it's worth maybe trying this new piece of tech, this new channel. You know, we know our data well enough that it's like, shall we go into TikTok or whatever the next social thing is going to be? You know, so I know it's a boring answer and it's very unsexy. But linear and methodical is the way to get to the cool tactics. And I don't want to dismiss what the staff is jazzed about. And the way I've always dealt with that in the past is, can they get exposure to what they're jazzed about in a way that doesn't risk the revenue that we're beholden to? So is it, you know, having somebody come in and talk about the next cool thing? Is it having them go to a conference? Is it whatever it might be? Because I used to have to deal with that a lot in like really traditional direct mail programs where, you know, the staff wanted to learn about everything else. So I think it's also creating that parallel track of peer training in so that they're getting exposure and will be ready to run with it when the risk to the file is minimized. Yes, does that help and sound at all plausible to you?
So helpful, so plausible, so like, yeah, this is great. Thank you very much.
Sure. And testing matrices are something else that we can work on in one-on-one if anybody needs help, because the math behind testing can be sort of a pain of what's directional significance and what's statistical significance and how big of a test cell do you need and all of that good stuff. So if you need help and a geek session on the math, we are here for that.
And, you know, for another, like an old lady walking uphill both ways to go to school story, back in my day, back in the Wayback Machine, when we were like, what is this newfangled thing called email fundraising? When, you know, people were using their AOL accounts, we tested email fundraising by literally taking our direct mail appeal and making it an email. And we dropped the direct mail and we waited a week and then we sent the email. And then we were like, we didn't get very many responses to the email. Let's try shortening it but essentially sending the same email again. And then we tried that and it was like, oh, we had better clicks, and it was, like literally just taking babies. It wasn't a lot of extra work because we already had the letter, but it was just being like, I'm going to try this thing. It's not too much added and it's not going to hurt because we weren't raising any money by email, and that we could, add. Then we had a postcard campaign, and I took the favorite postcard and we did a splash page on our website, and it was like, but literally use the things that and you do well, and see if you can repurpose them in using new tools.
Yeah, that's that one step beyond what you're doing. You didn't go from doing direct mail to like hosting gala events. You literally took your direct mail and repurposed it in another channel. That's what we mean by test the thing that's one step away from what you're doing now. And that's why, as I say, fundraising is rarely rocket science, but it is rigor to do it well. So as I say, it's unsexy and unpopular, but. All right, guys, we have about 5 minutes left. Are there any pending questions in the chat? Are there any questions brewing in your minds?
If I missed your question in the chat, speak up. I tried to keep up.
Yeah, because I can see there are 63 in the chat, but I can't see what they are, so.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ruth. I just want to name that this was really, really helpful. Let me put myself on video. I was nursing. I was breastfeeding and nursing my little one. But yeah, this was really, really helpful. And I have lots and tons of questions. I received this. I'm a founder and executive director of FemSage. We're based in Miami, Florida, and we basically guide people towards their healing. So we're a healing justice organization. And I'm also a member of our co-op with Sweet Liberty. You all probably know Diana Marie Lee. And so that's how I heard about this space here, right? So I think this was something that I was like, wow, like I didn't know what to expect, right? And I feel like it was kind of like an accidental kind of thing, but then I signed up, so I said, let me hold my commitment, because I would have just been like, you know what, I'm out, because this may not be my space. But I stayed, and I feel like it was really helpful and really clear. And I think the question that comes up for me is just, so someone like me who's kind of accidentally here, like, how do I connect? How do I kind of stay connected with you all? I plan on attending the next couple of Fridays coming up, but I heard some opportunities that I'm like, wow, like, I mean, I'm a Black woman doing this work, so like asking permission is kind of like out the door, right? Like, and I also want to be respectful and tactful that like there is a space here, it is being created, and I don't want to just kind of like infringe in that way. But yeah, so that's what's coming up for me is like, is there a way to stay connected outside of the Friday times, as far as like a relationship with FemSage, even maybe with Sweet Liberty, as far as how it relates to fundraising and the end of the year work. I myself, as for FemSage, we're about to turn 5 years old. So this is like really big for us, like fundraising. If we didn't have it before, we have to get real tight and clear, because we have a giving day. We don't do Giving Tuesday. We have our Give Miami Day. That kind of is like our foundation of folks. And I think my intention as a founder is to see who's really like committed to us, to like help to host us and kind of like move us into year 5 and celebrate with us. And so starting with like a host committee, getting people involved in that way feels right. And this alignment of like kind of like planning for that now feels like, wow, like right on time, right? It feels like really divine and really clear. And so I would love to stay connected. And yeah, I think all the other questions that folks asked, I was just like, wow, like this is just really dope. We are currently using a platform called Network for Good. We're just starting out with it. And so I think the largest piece is like, how do we kind of transfer like our data from like MailChimp and Wix to like Network for Good, and kind of like folks who are like subscribed because they just want to know our programmatic work, and how do we move them into Giving. So tons of questions.
Tons of questions. I love it. And I see Polly writing furiously. So my bet is she is going to email you after this call, so that you can hook up on whether it is how to get your data set up in Network for Good. And also one of my favorite projects, and I actually have some templates around this. I live in Tampa Bay, I live in St. Pete, right outside of Tampa. So we do Give Day Tampa, totally understand the model, and how do we take those people and get them really entrenched with the organization. So we can definitely reach out and get some stuff started to help you guys out. And in terms of the connection piece, one of the things that's been so, especially through the pandemic, I think sacred for me about Fundraising Friday is this has become, we've been at this for over 2 years now, and I think it just has created this really cool peer community. We always have this kind of discussion the second half of the month based on whatever the month topic is. And, you know, we've had the request a few times to figure out, like, do we want to put together a listserv, or do we want, is there something that we want to do so that we can tap into the great peer minds that are on the call? So that's something Polly and I are noodling on. And we're totally open to suggestion, because it has been just this really nice community of people who are traveling down the road as fundraisers together and trying to figure it all out as it happens. So more to come on that, but we will definitely reach out to dive into some of those specifics for you, and never hesitate to jump in with conversation questions about your specific use case, because somebody else on the call can either help you solve it or they've got the same question. That's the one thing that's become really clear in this community over the last couple of years. So we are happy to have you as part of it. Polly?
Yeah, Ruth, definitely. I will be sending you an email shortly after, and we'll see how we can connect. You know, as Bethany said, we don't really have a community space yet, but I would really love to hear feedback from folks about what folks want. You know, me still being new in my job, I'm still trying to figure out how to manage what's already on my plate, but I can't help but feel like you know, a brain trust, you know, a safe space where folks can ask any question anytime, and you don't have to wait for me to respond. It's anybody else can answer, because I'm not always the best person to answer questions, I can tell you that much. I think would be awesome, but it does, you know, it's like, it requires participation, like, you know, like anything else. Like it can only be useful if we have community that wants to participate too. So I'm interested to hear how other people feel about it. You could think on it and come back to me with it. But you know, if we go down that road, I'm gonna want folks active and not passive.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys, it is 2:01. We have kept everybody a minute late. I think Polly is teaching the next class. I think I'm doing the content and Polly's doing the teaching, because I will be on site with a grantee partner. But this is always such an amazing way to do Friday. So thank you guys so much for being with us and bringing great ideas and candor to these calls as always. And reach out if you need us, we're here. And thank you, Kirsten, for your extra input. I so appreciate it. Take care, all.
Thanks.